So our brain is a bunch of little creeks that split when we learn something new. And the more splitting they do, the more knowledge we retain and the better we get at these hard choices because they just become normal because we've lived in such that scared mentality when really it's creating new patterns and behaviors.
Adam, welcome to the Modern Masculinity Podcast. Thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Take us into your world. We're going to talk about your journey that you've gone through and sort of the challenges that you've overcome there. But on the other side of that weight loss journey, what are some of the challenges, some of the frustration, some of the load you're still carrying as a man, a father, a partner, any of the roles that you might play?
I think coming from an environment where I didn't have a lot of, there wasn't a lot of knowledge on how to like push forward and being a parent, being positive in regards to, just trying to be the best dad possible. There was never like a lot of, I never got a lot of insight on it. Family to me was something that I kind of had to create more than what I was born into. So as we're creating this family and I have four children and the involvement of being a dad, I guess I kind of wish I had a little bit more insight from people around me, if that makes sense.
Give us a little bit of the background and set the stage for what life was like before your transformation, and then we'll get into some of the things that you went through and how you were able to achieve such a radical transformation.
So I have always had a food addiction, since I was younger, like very young. I was a big kid. I was, 300 pounds at age 13. From there, I never really got into alcohol or anything like that until like my mid 20s. When I found alcohol to be such a relief system for me, where it, for the good part of 10 years, it really turned my brain off for a lot of things. That feeling, when it hits you, and I think from there I became addicted to that feeling of numbing out. And from there, gambling played a very strong point into that as well. And then of course food, because it's like the binging didn't stop with the alcohol or the food or the gambling. It was all just kind of a real it was almost catastrophic, right? For myself.
Was there a moment, or was it a series of moments that sort of highlighted that this was a direction that you needed to shift, or that there was a change that you needed to make?
When these things kind of come, they don't come like in the movies. There's not like a raw moment where you're like, this is it. This is my Rocky moment. I'm gonna run through the streets and box myself up the stairs, and the triumph. I think for myself, it was to the point where like I couldn't walk more than 10, 20 steps without being winded. Extreme back pain. I had an injury in 2019 where I broke my tailbone, and that's kind of what really put me into the position of gaining the weight so fast. So like not being able to walk very much anymore was becoming a thing. I mean, being absolutely gassed walking up a flight of stairs was very scary for me. I am a hypochondriac. I'm very like body sensitive. So the slightest murmur of something or a different pain or a headache, and it catapults me into thinking that it's the end of my life kind of thing. Again, these are all things that I've learned over the years are anxiety binding things that I've done to try to cope with how chaotic my life's been. And I think just wanting to have enough of that was really my like, we're gonna make a change. But it wasn't so much as like a positive, like, yeah, we're gonna do this. It was like, this is it for me, or like I'm gonna die trying.
I'm curious for you what you leaned on, what resources, what things sort of helped, pull you out of that place. I think that if I know anything about my story, there is a place mentally where we're at, and then there's a place, physically or sort of externally where we're at. And sometimes the two sync up, and sometimes one lags behind the other in the sense of, some guys, they make it look like they have it all put together, but inside they're crumbling. And, they tend to, it seems to follow each other. in one sense. And so I'm curious for you, what were some of the things that allowed you to move out of that place, both mentally and physically, but more so from an external standpoint?
I lived in fear for a long time in my life. I don't know if other guys have this issue. I'm sure they do. They just don't want to talk about it. So, from when I was a little boy, I grew up in a very chaotic house that was kind of rampant with addictions. And from there, I kind of had to be the spokesperson for myself and my little brother, who is autistic as well. So, he's nonverbal. So, from a very young age, I learned how to kind of thrive in chaos. And I think from there, that brought on a lot of fear-based environmental things for me, because even when I would be in school, I never could, like, focus. And I have ADD. I've had it since I was diagnosed with it since I was 6, but no one really ever took the time for Adam, so to speak. And when I did find those kind of people that did, it was kinda like on the wrong side of the track, so to speak. I think as the world moved on and I grew up, I really had to learn the fact that, like, other people's opinions of me didn't matter. I had to stop trying to fill everyone else's cup for some self-fulfillment that I was looking for when I wasn't getting that. I really had to learn that, Adam comes first in a lot of things. And I had a hard time, I don't want to say being selfish, but even like acknowledging the fact that I was able to put myself first in situations, because I craved the sense of belonging. I craved the sense of feeling needed and wanted. And I think that once I got over that hurdle of like, hey man, we're going to put it all out there. And if we're judged, if we're made fun of, if people take it a certain way, it is what it is. We can't really rely on people's opinions to get us through our life anymore, because it wasn't working for me. I was so concerned about being perceived a certain way that I didn't want to be who Adam was. And when I was in therapy years ago, my counselor used to ask me, like, who is Adam? If you take the booze away, if you take away certain social things, who is he? And I never knew who he was. And I think that once I started to really open up my life and sit in the anxiety of like how messed up my life had been and truly start to heal, that is kind of when I had that like a waking moment where like I didn't care what other people thought anymore.
And so when it was all said and done, what was the total number of, I don't even know how you measure it or quantify it, but when you look back, what was the summation of your transformation?
Sure, like I'm still like in the middle of it right now. I'm not even close to being done yet. We're 13 months into this. I think on Friday it's going to be 58 weeks. I don't even know kind of where the future holds for me. I know that as I sit right now, week 58, I'm still sober. I haven't had a drop of alcohol. I've lost 158 pounds so far. I still battle with my anxiety. It's not as frequent as it used to be. I'm learning how to sit in the cut, so to speak, for my life, where like I'm taking things as they come day by day instead of like a month, a year, 5 years in advance. I'm just taking today as today, and every day kind of compounds itself into small victories.
It makes me wonder, 158 pounds is, you lost basically what all of me. So it is a huge feat. I'm not saying you have huge feet. That's not what I'm saying.
Size 13s, buddy.
I would imagine that that was as much of an internal battle, an internal challenge, as it was actually going out and doing the physical activity to do that. Would you agree with that regard, or was it simply an external sort of challenge and battle with just doing the work and calories in, calories out sort of thing?
So I actually used GLP-1s to help catapult my weight loss. So I was on Ozempic for 1 year. Now I'm on Wegovy. Just it's a higher dose. I think what helped me really this time was it helped turn the noise off in my brain, that I wasn't consumed about what other people thought about my program. So I was able to live for Adam and just figure out what Adam needed to do instead of worrying about what I thought I was going to be perceived of. Because like for like 2 years my doctor tried to get me to take Ozempic and I was scared. I was, I had this image that I was going to take the shot and I would just drop dead. I had this image that it was going to make me go crazy. And I don't even know. I didn't even start drinking alcohol till my mid 20s. So like this is something for me that, to put something into my body that could really change my whole life. But again, when I was eating poorly, I didn't give a shit. Excuse my language, but like I didn't really care. I was using food for comfort. When the food wasn't enough, it was gambling. When it wasn't gambling, it was booze. When I started combining everything, that's when things got to the point where I got to 640 pounds. So like I needed the help. And Ozempic really changed my life. And that's kind of how, yeah, I'm doing the work. Like I'm getting the 10,000 steps a day. I'm eating at a calorie deficit now. I'm not drinking alcohol. I'm doing all the proper steps, but the mindset was put on by that GLP-1. It wasn't put on by, my raw ability to lose weight, which like I'll admit to it, man, it almost killed me, my weight, my addictions to alcohol. So I needed to, in a sense, cheat, I guess. And that's I used I used the tools.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting conversation. Is it cheating? I mean, I don't think so. I think, like to your point, it's just it's using the tools that are available to you, and no, despite that, I think that there's still an identity shift that needs to happen, perhaps even at an accelerated rate, because at a certain point we're going to do things that sort of coincide with our identity, and perhaps these tools make it easier to adopt a new one. But I gotta imagine that there's still a process in taking on this new identity, as opposed to snapping back or going back, or finding other ways to sort of sabotage yourself into staying the same.
Yeah, I just like the old way wasn't working. My mindset wasn't strong enough to handle eating a calorie deficit every day. My mindset wasn't strong enough to go out and do the exercising and not cheat or go get drunk. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't able to do it. And I got tired of faking the funk, telling people that I was going to do it and lying about it. I got tired of living in this fabrication that everything was going to be okay, because it wasn't going to be. And it was on a downhill spiral very quickly, to the point where I was losing even relationships with my children. I was losing that. I didn't have a job. I was, borrowing money from people to go get fucked up. Like, where's the life there? And I guess my like, if I had a rock bottom moment, would have been when I was living in a trailer on the outskirts of town where I lived. Did I think it was that bad? No, it was rock bottom, but it was a place for me to like, I was able to really sit in my own thoughts and understand, like, hey, what you've been doing is not working. And no one's going to be able to come save you but yourself. So I had to learn that. And I had to be alone to figure that out. Right. And I had to be completely morally broken in order to come to terms with that, and to kind of give myself to the idea that I not only took myself to being broken, but I was going to be the one to save myself too.
Yeah, it seems like we all are sort of given these arenas, if you will, to sort of prove ourselves. Sometimes it's the health and the physical arena, sometimes it's the relationships arena, sometimes it's the money business arena. We're sort of given these, like, a spiritual challenge, right? This holy and divine sort of obstacle that looks like it's the worst thing in the world, but actually is the best thing for us, because it creates all the opportunities that you're talking about, and it opens up, our eyes to what we're missing, essentially.
Yeah, you got to walk through the fire to get to the other side, right? And I heard a saying years ago where they talked about how, I want to say it was cows or buffalo or something, but when a storm comes, all the animals run like away from the storm. And I want to say it was buffalo, but bison maybe, or it was something like that. But these animals run towards the storm because they know on the other end of it, it's going to be clear pasture, you know? And I think for myself, I had to stop running away from these ideas that how I was going to be perceived. And I had to just put myself into it and figure it out. And I had to sit in the anxiety, you know, and doing that, it truly saved my life. But, you know, also it was being vulnerable too, right? Like a lot of people aren't ready to do what I did with, going online in a position where you're judged upon your appearance on social media, and you're judged about how cool you are because you don't like a post, or you don't follow something, or you don't reshare something because it's not trendy or not cool. Never mind going on there and basically telling your followers and people around the world that follow you that you're 640 pounds and you want to die and you need to do this to change your life and save yourself. Not a lot of people do that, you know what I mean? So for me, it was like I didn't have another option. I wasn't gonna lie to another person about the scale, like, oh yeah, I'm 340 pounds. Yeah, no, you're 540 pounds. Why are you lying? Or I would do this thing where I'd see another big guy and I'd ask somebody with me, like, oh, am I that big? Do I look like that? And of course people lie. They're like, no, man, you're way smaller than that guy. You look great. You look great. But it was the people around me who were like, "No, man, like you're bigger than that guy. Like we got to make a change," you know? So I'm grateful for that, but I'm also at the point where, I had to jump in head first and see where we were going to go. And I'm living proof that it works.
There's a time limit on how long we can be delusional. There's a shrieking window on that. And if we don't, come to reckon with the realities, then we're liable to suffer the consequences. And I'm realizing that too. And I think a lot of it is just, at least in my experience, for me, speaking for me, in my sample size of one, it's my unwillingness to sort of want to make the tough decisions, or sit in the uncomfortable things, or do the uncomfortable things, or it's sort of just staying in this, what ends up being just mediocrity, is what it sort of ends up becoming. But the interesting thing is, it doesn't feel like that in the moment. It feels comfortable. It feels safe, and that just turns into this. Um, it turns into a nightmare eventually.
100%. Hard things now make it easy later, and easy things now make it hard later. And that is 1,000% true. I kind of sat in this comfort zone for a long time where I wasn't really being honest about myself or how I was feeling or that. And that got me to 640 pounds, man. That got me to a serious alcohol problem. That got me to, wanting to kill myself. That got me to a whole bunch of places that looking back on it now, that's how sad I was. And I wish someone had come and saved me. And nobody ever comes. You have to be the one to save yourself. And making the hard decisions now, make them easy later. But if you make them easy now, it's harder later.
The challenge that I think I am, again, speaking from my own experience, is that I think I've been conditioned to think, oh, let me put in the effort, and it's going to be hard for a period of time, and then all of a sudden it's going to be rainbows and daisies. As opposed to what I've learned in reality is that it's going to continue to be hard. We have to stay in that place, and it's about finding comfort, continuing to do the difficult things, because it's like, it seems like that it's that moment of letting up that allows for us to sink into that mediocrity. And so that's been a big shift for me, in just seeing my subconscious think like, oh, if you do this now, it's going to be easier later. And it's like, we might get better, but I don't think it's ever going to get easy.
No. And that's the reality of it. It never does. We just get stronger. Your mental ability becomes more sharper because you understand it. I'm reading a book by Chase Hughes about how kind of your brain patterns, how we learn new behaviors and how we learn to like the discipline of things in our mind. And when you really focus on something, when you're trying to learn to do something different and it feels that very uncomfortable feeling, your brain actually splinters and creates new pathways. It was like the way I make it sound normal in my head is like when you're walking in the woods and you see a creek, and then that creek splinters off into another little creek, and all these run off, and then they end up coming into the river that go to the ocean. So our brain is a bunch of little creeks that split when we learn something new. And the more splitting they do, the more knowledge we retain and the better we get at these hard choices, because they just become normal because we've lived in such that scared mentality, when really it's creating new patterns and behaviors, right?
Yeah. Part of the thing I think for me recently is the feeling like I have to do it all on my own. I've been so surprised, but also like a huge sense of gratitude for the community and sort of village that has stepped up. That's a weird word to use, but like has been there for me when I've sort of called on them, whether it's my parents and the kids, or I think they've just been a huge help recently with that whole thing. But it's like, oh, I'm sitting here trying to do it all on my own when that's like trying to swim upstream or run uphill. As community or a support system, how has that sort of played a role in your transformation?
I have so like over the last 3.5 years, I've created quite a relationship with a friend of mine who's, we talk every day, and he teaches me things about philosophy, psychology, kind of like essentially like being a man, right? And I lost my dad 12 years ago to esophageal cancer. And from there, that opened up a whole new wound, because I never really had like, I want to say like a father role model figure. My dad and we didn't get along for a long time in my life. I was the unseen kid that got into trouble very young, and he didn't like that, and I left home at a very early age. I was 15 years old when I left home. And through all the whirlwinds of life, I've only really connected with a handful of guys. And this one individual is, it's hard love, but it's also, when you look past the hard love and you see the genuine in it, I think that really, it goes to show that like anybody can truly change their life with the right people around them. And I need men like that to be kind of stern to me, but like I don't take it personally anymore, if that makes sense. I used to take everything personally. Someone would say something to me and I would be like, what did I miss? What did I screw up on? What does that mean about me? And I totally forgot about the fact of like, well, I didn't forget. I honestly never knew at first. I just took everything at face value, but we're not the only ones that are screwed up. Everybody is fighting their own problems that we don't even think about when we're interacting with people. And I think once you remember that, I think it's a lot easier to like learn how to stand on your own, but also ask for help. And I think with men, it's a big disconnect because a lot of guys don't want to ask for help. A lot of guys are scared to sit in that, like, oh, what's this guy going to think of me? And I think that's why men have the issue with killing themselves more than women do, because guys get into this zone where they feel they can turn to no one, and then they end up just taking their own lives. I've been there where I felt like I had no other choice but to end my life. And luckily I wasn't able to do that. But I've been where a lot of guys have been that are scared to ask for help. And I think again, being vulnerable and putting it all out there is the only way to do it. I really feel that way, because I have friends who are they have changed their lives with weight and lost a lot of weight, and they run a different program, and we're all fighting battles that nobody knows, and I think the more that we're honest with our internal part of like, yeah, I'm fucked up, man. Yeah, I need help. Yeah, I'm sad. I'm having issues, this, that. Once we're more honest with that with other people, it's when we can start really getting past all the BS and truly work on saving each other, Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's one of the reasons that that I've continued to do this show is the people call it vulnerability. I don't know that I agree with that word because it's a loaded word. Transparency seems to be a appropriate word where in that transparency, guys are able to find solidarity, because by sharing these things, it's actually not, it's not a vulnerable thing. It's actually the opposite. Most of the times, if you share something, people are going to go, at worst, they're like, maybe they'll say that's kind of weird, but most of the time they're going to be like, I resonate with that, or I relate to that, or I go through that same sort of thing. And most of the time it ends up creating an opportunity for people to grow closer together, because we're not that different, in the things that we're doing.
You're absolutely right, man. That's actually a good way to look at it. I guess I think of it more as a vulnerability because it's like I know what it's like to be judged for being different. Like when you're fat your whole life, you're automatically looked at as lazy. You're automatically looked at as you're a loser. You're automatic like all these stereotype things. And I think when you get like everyone's like, oh, like you're very like people say, oh, you're a very kind person. I am very kind, but I work in a sales industry where like I do a lot of sales over the phone. Like I help clients buy cars where I never even meet them. Now, when I go to up a customer on our sales floor, automatically I feel like I'm at a disadvantage. I used to feel like that all the time. Like, oh, instead of me being concerned about what that customer's needs are, I'm thinking, oh, what are they thinking about me? How are they perceiving me? Are they looking at the fact that my shirt is unbuttoned at the bottom? Are they looking at the stain on my shirt? And it goes through my mind instead of just being present about the fact that we're trying to sell them a car. And I think being open and honest with like how I'm doing these things now is helping me not be so concerned about what other people view me as and more as staying in the moment of what's happening. And it's helping me heal, so to speak.
Yeah. 150 pounds later, you said you don't know what the future holds for you, but I'm gonna try and hold your size 13 feet to the flames here. What does that new identity sort of encapsulate, or how far out have you sort of dreamed of in terms of the transformation, and how far, can it go?
The goal is 300 pounds. The goal is getting skin removal surgery. The goal is to be a new person. Like, I don't know what it's like to be 250 pounds. You know what I mean? I don't know what it's like to be that, to be like that. As for like, I guess the transition into this, I feel like I'd like to help others. I'd love to sit, for instance, like yesterday afternoon, it's a perfect example. My mom's in the hospital right now, and I was driving to see her, and I was chatting with a friend of mine on the phone, and they were having a full-blown panic attack, like full blown, and kept telling me like, hey, like you don't need to sit through this, like you can hang up. And I know that feeling of being so riddled with anxiety, panic, and feeling like I'm gonna die, where like I wish someone was there to kind of walk me through it and like try to settle me where like I don't need to run around and panic at that point. And we worked through it for 30 minutes, and today I got a message saying like thank you very much for being there for me. And it made me realize that like a lot of people in society don't really even care about what others are going through. And I've always kind of had that empathetic gene with people where I truly care, and I always really have. It takes a lot to make me not care. I don't want to say like I've been like a doormat, so to speak, but standing up for myself has been a hard thing my whole life too. So I think what I'd like to do in the future is to hopefully be present with helping people overcome their objectives with stress and anxiety. And I don't know about being a counselor so much, but kind of just using my experience to teach others that you can get through this. It's going to work out. I know it's hard now, but it's not going to be hard forever. And I'd really like to put that on like a full scale front where I'm somebody that people could turn to help them save their lives.
Yeah, that's amazing. I've got two questions for us to wrap. The first is, I think, a perfect segue. If people wanted to get more connected with you, find out about you, what you've got going on, where's the best place for people to go?
I'm all over social media. Big Adam 604 is my Instagram. Adam Boyd on Facebook. Adam's Weight Loss Journey, TikTok, and YouTube. And Instagram and Facebook are big for me. And I'm in right in the middle of getting a website built, so I'll be on there as well.
Okay, we'll link all that up in the show notes for all of you guys. And last question here, Adam. In your opinion, what is your definition of modern masculinity?
This right here, man. Sitting here, being open, having someone listen and kind of work not only with me, but create a platform where others can watch and understand that they're not alone.